If you're not a psycho like me that goes out and buys pretty much every model that drops within reason, you're probably wondering which one of these should you get, because once the fad hits the market with the button locks, here it is, which one do I get? Today I'm going to help you with that. Before I get into talking about these three knives, I want you in the comments below to let me know which one you would choose. This is the Kaiser original. This has aluminum scales, a deep carry recessed pocket clip that is non-ambidextrous, so it's going to be, in quotes, righty only. The action is very accessible with the thumb studs. You can reverse flick it or thumb flick it, and the button is pretty damn good. Those of you worrying if you can disengage the button, it does kind of stand up above the scales, but not by much. This is incredibly light, coming in at 2.61 ounces. This next one is also very similar. This is the Civivi Altus. Action is pretty damn similar. It's actually a little bit more snappy, but that probably has to do with the way the liners and the scales work. Sometimes you might think the knife's more snappy because of the just quality construction, but a lot of it has to do with how the sound reverberates through the rest of the knife. The action is pretty damn good. In hand, it feels pretty good. I think it feels a little bit better than the original. You got some gorgeous wood scales here. I don't remember the wood, but you have a deep carry pocket clip that is not recessed, but it is ambidextrous. This one also relatively light, coming in at 2.86 ounces, only about 1/5 of an ounce heavier than the Kaiser original. Forgot to mention Nitro V blade steel, very slicey blade. So very similar to the Kaiser original, which is 154 cm. Nitro V and 154 are almost interchangeable as far as end usage and results when it comes to edge retention, corrosion resistance, and toughness. They're all in the same ballpark. And last, we have the Savivi Conspirator. Once again, Nitro V blade steel flat grind. This has a fuller instead of thumb studs, which does work just as fine. Beautiful micarta scales, which I think you can get the Altus in the micarta as well. Ambidextrous deep carry pocket clip. Similar to the original, the buttons do stand kind of proud of the scales when they're deployed. I've had the question a couple times. I just have never had the issue of disengaging a button lock, but if you do, I mean, let me know. This thing is built in my favorite Civivi. Full size, very similar. If you had the brazen and you like it, this is kind of like a better version of the brazen in my opinion. Fully milled out liners. Yeah, this thing's good to go. The weight's coming in just about an ounce heavier than both of them, 3.76 ounces on the Civivi Conspirator. The blade length on the original is just shy of 3 inches. The Altus is just over 7 inches, and the blade length arguably is just above 3 inches. And the Conspirator is coming in at almost an exact 8 inches despite the camera angle lying to you. I can tell you from right here to right here, it's not looking this is 8 inches. This camera angle is goofy as hell. But the blade length itself is coming in right around 3.5 with almost a full cutting edge. I called it 3 3/8 in the review. So which one of these is the best option for you, knowing all the statistics going into it? Well, this is going to be the lightest one, and in my opinion, the only true safe one that's under 3 inches. If you try to argue with the cop about the Altus, you may or may not lose. This one, I don't see how you could. Also, the aluminum scales, I personally feel, lend it to be more of a work-oriented knife. If I was using this on a consistent basis as one of my main knives, I anticipate this thing to kind of look like trash after about 2 weeks because I'm going to scratch the living crap out of these scales. And I won't be mad about it because that was my choice, right? But I do anticipate this looking very, very worn in a short period of time. The Altus, on the other hand, reminds me of that gentlemanly carry. Now, like I said, you may argue with a police officer if you have a 3-inch law. Short of that, I mean, they're kind of the exact same, other than the ergos on the Altus, I believe, are much better. This feels much more solid in hand than the original. I do like the original for what it is, but I do think the Altus feels much more solid in hand. It does have the advantage of being right or left-handed for the pocket clip, but action-wise and everything else that goes along with it, I think you're kind of getting something similar. I think the Altus is a step above the original. If you were torn between the two, that's my opinion. But it's not so drastically so that I would tell you, you really like the original? Well, I wouldn't buy it. That's never something that would come out of my mouth because it is a very good knife. Last, the Civivi Conspirator. Now this is a pretty easy decision for people that don't have that 3-inch blade law or don't care, not recommended, also not legal advice, just whatever, right? But if you don't care about that 3-inch blade law or you don't have it, this is probably one that you guys are going to pick up. In my opinion, the most neutral ergonomics. It does have the ambidextrous pocket clip. The action is amazing. I think the Conspirator, out of all of these, is the one that I would go for an everyday carry, unless I prefer the 3-inch and below knives. At that point, I would go with the Civivi Altus. If I had to choose between the Altus and the original, I would definitely pick the Altus. If I had to choose between the Conspirator and the Altus, it is the Conspirator all day, every day. With all that being said, these are all around the same price range. And to be perfectly honest, they are all very, very well constructed. One more ding on the Altus that I would say is that this does have a tendency to loosen that pivot after you fidget with it for a little bit more frequently than the Civivis. To me, not a major issue. Go get some frickin' blue Loctite that'll last you for damn near ever if all you're using it for is knives, and put a couple, threads with blue Loctite, and you'll be good to go. But, just keep that in mind as well. The original, this is for the guys that don't care if their knives get scratched, and it'll look like crazy. But it's great action, very slicey. The Altus, a little bit more gentlemanly than the original, and it's going to complete most of your daily tasks without an issue. In my opinion, recommended over the original. And the Conspirator for your everyday tasks with a full-size blade, if you can carry a full-size blade, and in my opinion, better than the other two.